In this video, we will dive into the movie Gladiator 2 2024. We will discuss the movie story, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the movie production details and box office performance. Finally, we will provide the review and personal reactions. Let's begin with the movie story. The opening text states how 16 years after the death of Marcus Aurelius, Rome has been run by corrupt twins emperor Geta and Craecella. His dream of Rome has fallen and the city is set to go down as well. Numidia 280, a young man, Lucius Varus Aurelius, living as Hanno, tends to his crops along with his wife Arishet. They witness smoke and fire from the nearby gates, indicating a call to battle. They build up and join their fellow warriors against General Acacius and his Roman army. Lucius and Arishet put up a good fight, but Acacius spots Arishet firing her bow and arrow, and he commands his men to kill her. She is fatally hit with an arrow and falls into the ocean, while Lucius is also knocked out into the water. He finds himself between life and death, watching Richard joining the ferryman into the afterlife while he is pulled back to life. Lucius is enslaved alongside the surviving soldiers and citizens, while the city is taken. Acacius returns to Ostia and is reverted by Geta and Craecella. Geta tells Acacius that they have their sights set on conquering Persia and India next, while Acacius believes they should be focused on the citizens of Rome. Geta denies Acacius time away with his wife and makes plans with Craecella for gladiator games in the Colosseum. Lucius and the other slaves are brought to Antium in an arena overseen by a stable master named Macrinimus, played by Denzel Washington. The slaves are forced into combat against feral baboons. The Numidian chieftain Jugurtha, who was brought in with Lucius, chooses death in the arena and lets a baboon tear into his neck. Lucius fights one baboon and bites its arm before strangling it to death with his shackle. Macarius quickly takes notice and later puts Lucius in hand-to-hand combat against gladiator trainer Vigo, further impressing Macrinus with his fighting skills. Macrinus notes the rage that Lucius lives with, and Lucius states that he has his sights set on killing Acacius. Macrinus promises he can do this if he fights hard enough in Rome. Acacius returns to his wife, the remarried Lucilla. He expresses his disgust at seeing how many soldiers are being sacrificed for the twin emperors' need for conquest. Together they plan and instructions alongside their allies like Gracchus. Macrinus brings Lucius to a party in the city thrown by Senator Tharix in front of the emperors and other members of the Senate. Lucius is pitted against another fight for their entertainment. He tries to stop the other man but is forced to fight and eventually impale the man. Geta approaches Lucius and asks him a question, but Lucius only responds by quoting Virgil. The gates of hell are open night and day, smooth the descent and easy the way, but to return and view the cheerful skies, in this the task and mighty labor lies. The gladiator games commence with Lucius and others brought into the Colosseum. Lucius runs the dirt in the arena through his hands, much like the late warrior Maximus did. This causes Lucilla to take notice and recognize Lucius. He and other gladiators are pitted against undefeated champions Glacio. He slaughters the other man while riding his pet Reno until he is left to fight Lucius. They have a brutal fight before Lucius is knocked down. and Gita gives Glocio a chance to spare Lucius. Rejecting this, Lucius continues the fight until he impales Glacio and then gets the thumb down signal to decapitate Glacio. After the fight, Lucilla goes to her private quarters and remembers hearing the quote from Virgil, then remembers sending Lucius away into exile as a boy for his safety. He tearfully realizes her son has returned and Macrinus starts to put two and two together. Lucius meets and befriends the gladiator Dr. Ravi as he tends to Lucius' wounds. Later, Gracchus brings Lucilla to meet with Lucius so she can tell him of his true parentage, that he is the son of Maximus. Lucius does not care to hear it and angrily orders Lucilla to leave his cell due to her sending him away from home and the fact that Accius is responsible for Arisha's death. She then goes to Acacius and asks that he help Lucius. Lucius trains and later joins the other gladiator in a naval battle. He leads them to victory by having them destroy the other ships or and then ramming into them down the middle. He tries to fire his crossbow at Acacius, but it instead goes right between Geta and Cricella, which they consider a personal attack. Macrinimus goes to Tharic's home to kick him out of it since he owes him a large debt. To make up for it, Tharax spills the beans about the plan to overthrow the emperors since he was previously in on it. Macrinus collects this information and still forces Tharax out. Acacius and Lucilla are brought before Geta and Cercella to expose their treachery. Geta says they will be forgotten before they are imprisoned. Macrinimus convinces Geta to put Acacius in the games as punishment. Lucius bonds with Ravi more and learns that he was a former slave who won his freedom after fighting in the games. Ravi shows Lucius the shrine to the gladiators, including a wall that has Maximus' name crossed off. But his armor and sword are still kept hung up privately, along with his words, "What we do in this life echoes in eternity." Acacius is forced to fight against soldiers of the Praetorian Guard. He slaughters them all before he must fight Lucius. They battle until Lucius has Acacius at his mercy. Lucretius then refuses to execute Acacius after he tells him how he loved his mother and how he would have died for his father. Geta orders the Petronian guard to execute Acacius by firing dozens of arrows at him. Lucius then commends their actions, telling the spectators that if this is how Rome treats its heroes, they should expect to be treated worse. Lucius leaves as they charm his name, or rather Hanno. Macrinus visits Lucius in his cell to question his decision to spare Acacius. Lucius believes in a fairer way to lead Rome, but Macrinus disagrees. He later visits the emperor as the people are beginning to riot in the streets. After Geta insults Cracella over their different views on how to handle the matter, Macrinus talks to Cracella in private, knowing that he feels that he always has to share everything with Geta and never has anything for himself. Macrinus convinces Cracella to confront his brother with the dagger. Geta tries to talk Cracella down, but Macrinus guides his hand to slash Geta's throat before decapitating him. Lucilla visits Lucius again to give him the ring that belonged to his grandfather. They reconcile, and Lucius hugs his mother for the first time in ages. Lucius then gives the ring to Ravi to deliver to a general in Octasia so that his army might come to their aid. Cercella takes over the throne and makes his first act to appoint his pet monkey Dendas as his consul while having Macrinus in a higher position of power. Macrinus presents Geta's head to the other horrified senators after Cercella leaves to establish why he must gain even more power, forcing them to vote him to lead the Patrician Guard. Macrinus then goes to Lucilla's cell to talk to her about how her grandfather had him enslaved and how he plans to end the imperial bloodline by becoming emperor himself. Macrinus has Caracalla put Lucilla and the other conspirators out in the Colosseum, with only Lucius to defend her. The plan is to have the crowd riot if Lucilla really is killed, which would provide an opportunity to kill Caracalla and ascend to the throne. When Lucius learns that he must defend his mother, he breaks out of his cell and kills Vigo before the other slaves back out and revolt. Lucius then goes to take his father's armor and sword before leading the other men to take back their freedom. The gladiators battle the Praetorian soldiers in the arena, leading to a full-on riot as spectators become hit and arrows and start to fight back. Gracius is also killed in the middle of the fight. In the chaos, Macrinus seizes the opportunity to stick a cylinder bodkin in the Caracalla's ear to kill him and then fire an arrow into Lucilla's chest before Lucius can save her. Macrinus then jumps on horse to join the Praetorian Guard to face the incoming army at the gates. Lucius chases after Macrinus and concerns him right as the two armies come face to face. Lucius then charges with his horse towards Macrinus, leading to their final duel. Macrinus nearly overpowers Lucius, but he remembers his mother's words and gains the upper hand. He chops off Macrinus' left arm before slashing him fatally. Lucius then addresses both armies and convinces them to no longer fight senselessly. They put their swords away and chant in agreement. At night, Lucius goes into the arena by himself. He kneels into the sands and speaks to Maximus as he mourns both his parents. Gladiator 2 takes 87 million to break Ratty's stock opening box office record. Gladiator 2 is not an entertaining audience in the US, Canada, and China until this Friday, but scored the highest over international opening for a Ridley Scott film over the weekend, taking 87 million. The film opened in 63 territories late last week, including the UK, where it took 11 from 722 locations. It also performed particularly strong in France, 10.3 million from 729 locations. However, this opening is a touch weaker than that for February's blockbuster sequel, Dune Part 2, which took 97 internationally over its first weekend. Meanwhile, Pixar's Inside Out 2 made 140 million over the same period, and Disney's Deadpool and Wolverine 233 million. It is, however, significantly up on Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, which made 30 million internationally on its first weekend, and Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt action comedy The Fall Guy, 36 million. Gladiator 2 cast and crew have been on a week-long global press tour, which included with a screening attended by King Charles III in London last week. It has also partnered with dozens of international brands to better amplify its profile, including a brand of Mexican biscuits, a tie-in with Rome's public transport system, and a campaign with German Backweier. In Australia, a limited edition range of Satco heavy foods and drinks called the Emperor's Collection was available in Desert Shop Oliver Brown. Meanwhile, Persian's chain French coffee shop is offering a Gladiator to salted caramel latte. Hopes are high the Scott's balloted sequel can boost the global box office for the final month and a half of the year, following disappointing numbers of Venom the Last Dance and The Rock's comedy Red One, which opened last week around the world. Gladiator 2 opened in the US on the same day as highly anticipated musical Wicked, leading some to anticipate a Barbenheimer-style battle for the top spot, although double billing outings are likely to be less popular. Gladiator 2 surpasses the original at the global box office despite its looming digital debut. After passing the hugely important $400 million milestone at the worldwide box office some days ago, Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2 has now become the filmmaker's third biggest hit. The Swords and Scandal epic has completed one full month of release, is debuted alongside Universal Wicked in a highly anticipated face-off and will soon debut on digital streaming platforms. It's still trailing the original Gladiator, and the chances of it breaking the gap before the end of its run look slim, especially since it's hemorrhaging theaters. With a little over 150 million domestically and 252 million from overseas markets, Gladiator 2 has crossed a cumulative global haul of 406 million. It recently overtook Prometheus' 403 million lifetime haul to become the third biggest hit of Scott's illustrious career. His biggest hit remains The Martian, which crossed over 650 million in 2015, followed by the original Gladiator, which made around 460 million in 2000. Can Gladiator 2 eclipse its predecessors? It's likely. The movie lost nearly 900 screens domestically this weekend. Starring Paul Mescal in the lead role, Gladiator 2 was produced on a reported budget of over $200 million. The rule of thumb say that a film its size needs to cross twice its budget to break even, which means that Gladiator 2 should now be in the clear but not by much. There was some dispute over its budget, with a THR report suggesting that it had blown past the $300 million mark. Scott denied that in an NYT interview. Either way, the film is widely seen as an inferior to the original, with criticism being treated as its narrative, but praise going to Denzel Washington's supporting performance. Gladiator 2 is about to debut on digital. Starring Russell Crowe, the original Gladiator went on to win the Best Picture Oscar and is widely regarded as one of the finest blockbusters of the last few decades. The new movie earned mostly positive reviews and appears to have settled at a fresh 71% rating on the aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes. Gladiator 2 also stars Pedro Pascal, Connie Nelson, Joseph Cohen, and Fred Hanchinger. The movie will be released on digital streaming platform this week. You can still watch it in the theaters and stay tuned to hear for more updates. Gladiator 2 box office finally passes major global milestone, but it is enough to be profitable. Gladiator 2 has just passed a major box office milestone as the sequel continues to play in theaters. Directed by Ridley Scott, the long awaited sequel picks up the story 15 years after the end of the original Gladiator, following Paul Mescal's Lucius as he becomes a hero of the Colosseum. Gladiator 2 got off to a strong start at the box office on November 22, opening with 55 million, but the film's large budget of about 240 million makes its bar for success quite high. Box Office Mojo now revealed that Gladiator 2 has now crossed 400 million worldwide. This 400 million total comprises 140 million domestic and 252 million internationally. Considering the movie budget, however, it may still have a ways to go before it breaks even. The sequel is also 605 million away from the original Gladiator box office haul. What Gladiator 2 box office milestone means for the movie profitability. Reports regarding Gladiator 2 budget have varied, but THR peaked the number at 250 million. Scott himself said that he ended up coming in 10 million under budget on the project, so it's possible the real budget is closer to 240 million if THR's figure is not taking that into account. Using the standard Hollywood rule for thumb, Gladiator 2 with a 240 million budget would be looking at breakdown point of at least 480 millions. This number could be as high as $600 million. Gladiator 2 seemingly still has a way to go before it's profitable, and it will certainly inch closer to this threshold over the holidays. Still, the best case scenario at this point from the data available seems to be that Gladiator 2 will be a very modest success. Scott, however, seems quite pleased with his sequel's performance and has said via Mamaskiki that there's a certainly going to be Gladiator 3. With Scott so optimistic about Gladiator 3, it's entirely possible that the sequel's break-even point is actually lower than the numbers above. Our take on Gladiator 2 box office performance. Gladiator 2 reviews have been generally positive, but they are certainly not as positive as those for the original movie. The sequel, for example, earned only a B cinema score and has a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, compared to the original film's 80%. The original movie also has an 87 popcornometer score, while the sequel has an 82%. Though the figures are not that far apart, the lack of the glowing response did likely hurt the sequel. It remains to be seen whether Gladiator 3 will happen, but it's hard to imagine another movie getting made at the same budget level as the sequel if it does. Still, it's worth celebrating the sequel's now box office milestone, especially since it's got highest since the Martin crossed 630 million worldwide in 2015. Unfortunately, however, Gladiator 2 certainly will not be hitting these same highs. 5 reasons why Gladiator 2 killed it at the box office. The biggest box office showdown of the year in the books, Paramount's big budget historical epic Gladiator 2 went up against Universal musical Broadway adaptations Wicked, making for a huge double bill, the likes of which we just don't see at then often. It's easily the biggest one-two punch since Barbie and Oppenheimer both hit theaters on the same weekend last year. This time around, things played out similarly as Gladiator 2 had to settle for second place at the domestic box office. However, life is still looking pretty darn good for the blockbuster, all things considered. Director Ridley Scott's long-awaited Gladiator sequel opened to an estimated $55 million domestically. Wicked, meanwhile, absolutely decimated expectations with a 114 millions opening. But context is important here. Second place be damned, they still rank at the second best opening of Scott's huge career, trailing only Hannibal 58 million more than 20 years ago. It also stellar debut for an R-rated non-comic book movie to that, and it's the third highest R-rated opening for 2024, behind only Deadpool and Wolverine $211 million and Bad Boys Ride or Die 56 million. This to say there's nothing to be disappointing about. Paramount also had a big hit internationally on its hands. The sequel has already pulled in 165 million overseas through 2 weekends, giving the 250 million budget epic as 221 millions running total. With a budget that big, it needs to keep the momentum going, but this is a 10 fine stars, so what went right there? What contributed to the film's success in the early going looks to the biggest reason why Gladiator 2 is killing at the box office. The marketing for Gladiator 2 was very effective. No book movie can succeed without an effective marketing campaign. To that end, Paramount Picture did its best job in that regard with Gladiator 2. Did it perhaps spend too much money on the film? Sure, but that's another argument entirely. So far as selling the movie to the masses goes, the studio did right by Ridley Scott and this long awaited sequel. The trailers for Gladiator 2 promise epic action made for the big screen while also making it clear that the impressive cast will be doing things that are probably going to be fun to see. Who doesn't want to watch Pedro Pascal duking is out the arena, the man behind the Metrodian in the glory days of the Roman Empire? It would have been easy to over-rely on the legacy of the original film in trying to sell its sequel more than 2 decades later. Instead, Paramount just tried to sell a movie that looks awesome and is worth seeing in a theater. It just so happened to be a sequel is one of the most broadly beloved Best Picture winner of the last 30 years. Gladiator 2 is very popular overseas. There is often a much larger focus in the US on the domestic box office that's understandable. People in North America want to know what's going on there. The US is also right there with China as the biggest movie going marketplace in the world. That said, this is a global theatrical marketplace and big, expensive movies and designs to play for audience all around the world. While Wicked won the day in the US, Gladiator 2 remained dominant overseas, which is a very good sign for Scott's privacy epic. Gladiator 2 got offered to a great start overseas last weekend with a 87 million haul in 67 market. The sequel retained its status as the top grossing movie internationally this past weekend, taking in 50 million while Wicked pulled in $50 million. It was a narrow victory, but winning or losing is not the point here. What matters is that this movie is clearly appealing broadly to audience across the globe, which is the key to its early success and will be crucial going forward. For now, at least, things are looking good. The Denzel Washington's effects. It might be painfully obvious to say, but Denzel Washington is a very popular movie star. He is also one of the rare movie stars whose name alone can still increase interest in a given project. It's actually shocking that the man has not been pulled in a $1 billion grosser at his point in his career. In any event, audience love him and that undoubtedly helped Gladiator 2. When we talk about an actor adding value to a movie, this is truly the high watermark in terms of that panning out the box office. Washington's presence here helped sell tickets. Period. Film Chris Evangelista called Washington the best part of Gladiator 2 in his reviews. To that end, the movie has a merely so B cinema score and is not really as loudly praised as the original. So, in some ways, this movie actually had to overcome a relative lack of must-see buzz. Having Denzel Washington firing on all cylinder continually doesn't hurt its case in that regard. The original Gladiator remains a beloved classic. It may be a bit of an underestimate, but Gladiator is a really popular movie. It won the Best Picture Oscar. It was a huge box office hit in its day, and it turned Russell Crowe into one of the Hollywood's biggest stars for a time. Not for nothing, but sports commentator Stephen A. Smith has proudly declared it his favorite movie ever. He's surely not alone. People straight up love this movie, and its audience has only grown in the 24 years since its release. That being the case, Gladiator 2 had a sizable built in audience. There was never any guarantee that audience would show up, but they sure as checked it. Oddly enough, the sequel made about 62% more than the original 34% opening weekend haul from 24 years ago. Accounting for inflation, the sequel sold nearly as many tickets on opening weekend. Considering what the pandemic did to moviegoing habits and everything that has changed in the industry over the last couple of decades, that's a solid audience retentions. Gladiator 2 probably benefited from the Wicked showdown. Much was made in the media of the box office showdown between Wicked and Gladiator 2 that transpired over the weekend. It was compared an awful lot to the Barbenheimer phenomenon last year when Barbie and Oppenheimer opened on the same weekend. And rightfully so, the internet dubbed this particular showdown as clicked did it generated the same level of straight up favor that Barbenheimer did last summer. No, but it still brought an awful lot of extra attention to both movies. It also got people wondering, cloud something similar to Barbenheimer happen again? Could two movies this big succeed at the same time? The answer proved to be yes. More importantly, I would argue that Gladiator 2 was the luster between it and Vict it needed a very bit of help it could get to justify that wild huge $250 million budget, and it still has a long way to go before it will break even. Even so, Vict is not going for the same audience, so it's not as tough. These films would have made 75 million without the showdown. And rather, the extra tension, all those bare comparison probably benefited Paramount and Mr. Scott in the case. Gladiator 2 is in the theaters now. Gladiator 2 ending explain where there'll be a Gladiator 3. Almost 25 years, Director Ridley Scott returned to one of his most acclaimed films with Gladiator 2, the sequel to the 2000 Best Picture winner starring Russell Crowe as Maximus Decimus Mercedius. This new film instead follows Paul Mescal as Lucius Verus. He was played as a child by Spencer Treat Clark in the original, who was all grown up and ready to enter the arena himself. It's a sprawling saga of swords, sandals, and schemes, and features a healthy helping of gladiator action. So, how does Gladiator 2 play out? Let's gear up and get our Roman Empire on. Call of the Colosseum. Gladiator 2 opened 16 years after the original film and pulls something of a rest on the status quo. It turns out Maximus giving one motivational speech before he died did not fix Rome forever. Since the emperor is now ruled by siblings emperors Geta and Caracalla, who have not exactly lived up to the ideas imposed by Maximus. If anything, the new emperor are a pair of dragged brats who repeatedly and their general Marcus Aurelius to conquer land that were doing well enough on their own. Acacius led us campaign to the Numidia in North Africa, where he crosses paths with our protagonist Lucius. As hinted in the original film, Lucius is revealed to be Maximus' biological son here. We learn important new information about Lucius in this film. Not only it is confirmed that he is Maximus' biological son, this was hinted at the original but not stated outright, but also that his mother Lucilla separated him away from Rome after Maximus' death out of fear of people learning his true identity. Now a grown man married to fellow warrior Arishat, Lucius does his best to help defend his adopted homeland of Numidia from the Roman invaders but comes up short. Arishat is killed, Numidia is conquered, and the survivors are taken as prisoners of war before eventually falling into the hands of armed dealer and gladiator trainer Macrinus Denzel Washington. Desiring revenge on Acacius for Arisha's death, Lucius makes a deal with Macrinus to be his champion in the arena so long as he eventually gets a shot at the journal. What makes all of this more complicated is that we soon learn that Acacius is not all the bad of the guy. It turns out that he is now married to Lucilla, making Lucius his unknowing stepson, and is plotting to overthrow the emperor because of their bloodlust. Acacius shares the values of Maximus as laid down by the previous emperor Marcus Aurelius of Rome, where power rested with the people represented by the Senate. But Acacius' plans runs counter to the machination of Macrinus, who is secretly plotting to ascend to the throne by gaining favor with the emperors before playing them against each other. We know that's a lot of moving parts to keep track of, but don't worry, we'll help you sort it out. Gladiator 2 ending. After surviving a handful of battles in the Colosseum, Lucius finally gets his chance to fight Acacius after Macrinus revealed the general's plot to the emperor, leading them to condemn Acacius to death in the arena. Acacius pleads with Lucius during the fight, telling him that he loved Maximus and that doesn't want to force Lucilla to watch one of her loved one kill the other. He finally seems to get through to Lucius, who lays down his arms only for the emperor to order Acacius executed by their archer. Finally realizing that this revenge quest was for nothing, Lucius reconciled with his mother just in time for her to also face commendation for her part in Acacia's plot. At the same time, Macrinus makes his move by tricking Carcella into attacking Gita and helps him decelerate his brothers. Painted as second consul by Carcella, first consul gives to his pet monkey Dontus in the movie's funniest moment. Macrinus is now more powerful than the Senate. We also finally learn Macrinus' motivation when he tells Lucilla that he was once a gladiator slave for her father. Marcus Aurelius, and that he vowed to one day get revenge by ruling the emperor that once kept him in chains. Knowing that he is outlived his usefulness to Macrinus, Lucius gives a ring that had belonged to Acacius to Ravi, a former gladiator and now healer who has been patching him up between arena bouts. He tells Ravi to take the ring to Acacius' army and say that it's being sent from the Prince of Rome. Lucius and Macrinus fight one on one, with Lucius emerging victorious by slicing off Macrinus' arm and leaving his body in the river. Caracalla and Macrinus order Lucilla and her conspirator senator to the arena to be slaughtered by his Praetorian guards, with Lucius acting as their sole defender in an obvious ploy to execute all their enemies in one swoop. Instead, Lucius turns the tables by setting free all the other gladiators who join him in the battle against the emperor's troops. Maginus takes advantage of the combination to kill Caracalla before firing an arrow at the killing Lucilla. Maginus flees the arena on horseback with Lucius' hot pursuit. They are then concerned at the city's edge by Axius' army, while the Emperor troops come in from the other direction with nowhere to go. Lucius and Macrinus fight one on one, with Lucius emerging victorious by slicing off Macrinus' arm and having his body in the river. With all other contenders to the throne dead, Lucius makes a speech to both armies, saying that it's finally time for Rome to ascend to glory by following the ideas of Maximus and allowing the people to have power. The movie ends with Lucius mourning his loved ones in the empty Clusium. Gladiator 2 was the remake of the Gladiator 1, and it's a sequel to that movie of 2000. Gladiator 2 box office is climbing 2024 highest grossing charts after passing Venom 3 and A Quiet Place Day 1. Gladiator 2 continued to ascend the charts of 2024 biggest grossing movies at the domestic box office. The long-awaited sequel revealed what happened to Lucius versus Paul Mescal in the years after the events of the original movie. Gladiator 2 had its domestic debut on November 22, the same day as Wicked, even though Wicked box office outperformed Gladiator 2 during the opening weekend. The Ridley Scott directed sequel has still done well at the box office. As per the numbers, Gladiator 2 is now the 14th highest grossing movie at the domestic box office in 2024. At 146 million, Gladiator 2 domestic box office has surpassed Sony's Venom, The Last Dance, and Paramount's A Quiet Place Day 1 in order to become one of the top 15 highest grossing movies of the year. With Blake Lively, its end with us only newly ahead at 148 million. Gladiator 2 is poised to soon become the 13th highest earning movie of the year. And Side Out 2 domestic box office is 652 million, Deadpool and Wolverine 636, Wicked 361, Despicable Me 361. What this means for Gladiator 2. Gladiator 2 box office performance has been largely overshadowed by the record-breaking numbers of Wicked and Moana 2, the latter of which released only 5 days after Gladiator 2 domestic debut. Wicked and Moana 2 box office numbers are impressive, with the two movies already the third and fifth highest grossing domestic movies of 2024. However, Gladiator 2 most recent milestone is a reminder that it is also performing well. Gladiator 2 is all about guarantee to surpass its end with us domestically and is likely to end up earning more than Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes as well. Gladiator, its ending set up a third movie that will see Lucius trying to keep the dream of Rome alive and to prevent it from falling back into the hands of tyrants. Continued box office success will help make Gladiator 3 become a reality and deliver the story that will reveal what happens next to Lucius in his historical fiction version of Rome. Our take on Gladiator 2 box office. In Gladiator 2 had released at a different point in 2024 and not at the same time as Wicked and Moana 2. Its box office number would likely be receiving more attention. All three movies deserve credit for 2024 record-breaking Thanksgiving box office, and all of them are proving to have legs at the box office as well. The more Gladiator 2 moves up the domestic charts, the more likelihood there is of seeing Gladiator 3 happen. And the hiatus between movies will hopefully be shorter than 24 years this time. Gladiator 2 galvanized crowds as its newest massive global box office milestone is just 1 week. Paramount can perhaps breathe easy now. Gladiator 2, the big budget sequel directed by Ridley Scott, is poised to emerge as a bona fide hit after a massive opening this past weekend. The movie debuted internationally a week period to its stateside release and has already recovered its reported budget at the global box office. On its fifth day of release domestically, the movie was able to pass another significant milestone as it hurtles toward the 300 million mark this weekend. With $67 million domestically and another 165 million in overseas markets, Gladiator 2 has so far generated 230 million worldwide. The movie was produced on a reported budget of $210 million, although a THR report suggested that cost has ballooned to over $300 million because of the industry-wide strikes and Scott's shooting style. But the filmmaker dismissed these reports in a recent NYT interview and said that he actually brought the movie in under budget. A sequel to his blockbuster original film Gladiator 2 opened to mostly positive reviews and currently sits at a fresh 71% approval rating on the aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes. In his review, Collider's Ross Bernard called it a strange beast of a movie and singled out Denzel Washington's sporting performance as the seeming machinist as the film highlight. While Washington has been acclaimed for playing the protagonist's response to Paul Pascal's central performance, as Hanno has been mixed. Gladiator 2 earned positive reviews from its action but mixed response to Paul Pascal's performance. The young Irish actor took over the franchise from Russell Crowe, who won an Oscar for his role in the original Gladiator. The film also took home the Academy Award for Best Picture and ended up grossing over $460 million worldwide. Gladiator 2 is already the second biggest film of the Washington's celebrated career and among the top 10 highest films of Scott's career. The movie follows Hanno on a vengeful quest against the Romans responsible for murdering his beloved ones. Gladiator 2 boasts numerous inventive battle consequences, including one that include ships and snakes. It also leans more heavily on Paris intrigue than the first film, but there has been more criticism for its disjointed narrative, which could be a side effect for the film being chopped down from a 4-hour long original cut and for the erasure of actor May Klasme. The movie also stars Pedro Pascal, Connie Nelson, Fred Henchinger, and Joseph Kane. You can watch Gladiator 2 in the theaters. Unlike Christopher Nolan, one Oscar-winning director was not a fan of Gladiator 2 empty glories. Academy Award-winning director Oliver Stone explained why he did not like Gladiator 2 since its release. Gladiator 2 reviews has elicited a mixed response from critics, while general audience has received the long-awaited sequel more favorably. The movie currently has a 71% Rotten Tomato score, and 82% Popcornometer score, with Gladiator 2 being revealed as Christopher Nolan's favorite 2024 movie. One of the Hollywood's most prominent filmmaker is a fan of the Ridley Scott's directed film. While speaking on the PVD podcast, Stone made it clear that he does not share Nolan's atheism for Gladiator 2. Stone acknowledged that the movie was made well on a technical level and was entertaining to watch. However, he found it difficult to be invested in the character and the story, describing the sequel as empty calories and a commercial product that paled in comparison to the original Gladiator movie. It's certainly watchable. It good, well made, usual tired, tragedy film, but I did not care about the people. I was not invested. The first one was a classic. The second one is empty calories like a commercial product. What this means for Gladiator 2. The juxtaposition between Stone and Nolan's reviews reflect the divided critical response to Gladiator 2. Scott's ability to direct a well-paced, highly entertaining movie is still being praised, as are many of the movie's technical achievements. However, the reception to the story and the character is not positive as it was for Gladiator. Denzel Washington's Macrinus is the only character who is constantly praised in the sequel's review, with Washington's performance considered one of the best parts of the movie. In Nolan's review, he mentioned that Gladiator 2 must be a remake and sequel in one feat and feels in the movie does well. These familiar story beats did not work well for Stone, who was unable to find reason to care about Lucius and the rest of Gladiator 2's character. As a sequel made 24 years after the original movie, Gladiator 2 has little choice but to sequel and remake, especially since the original movies ended the story of its protagonist Maximus Decimus Mercedes, played by Russell Crowe, but this does not change Stone's outlook on the new movie. Our take on Oliver Stone's comments. While Stone's empty calories and commercial product comments are somehow harsh, I agree about not being as invented in Gladiator 2 as I was in Gladiator. The original movie helped me get invested in Maximus by showing his relationship with Marcus Aurelius and Lucilla before the horrific injustice he faced. Gladiator 2 could have benefited from spending more time with Lucius and showing his life in Numidia before the Romans invaded. If Gladiator 3 happens, it may be easier to be invested in Lucius now that his character is fully established. Gladiator 2 movie review. It's surprising that prolific director Ridley Scott has only made 4 sequels in his long career: Hannibal Prometheus, Annual, Covenant, and now Gladiator 2. His two alien follows-up remain divisive, seen by some as overcomplicating the original work's simple, ferocious beauty. Gladiator 2 does not burden itself with overcomplication. In fact, it's a pretty simple outstaging of Gladiator tale of political upheaval seen through the eyes of a warrior. But as history has shown time and again, the classics can always hit home when staged with nerve. Gladiator 2 is incredibly light on his feet thanks is no small part to an atheistic cast. The modern polished Scott puts on the historical action framework he nailed 2 decades ago make his sequel no one asked for a real champion blockbuster. Like Maximus Decimus Mercedes before him, exiled Herr Lucius finds himself in Roman custody and forced to engage in gladiatorial combat. Lucius' anger with the system clashes with his devotion to the ideas of strength and honor exposed by Maximus, which provide some nice conflict for Mescal to play within Gladiator first half and helps distinguish him from a heroism from that of Maximus. He entered the arena seeking revenge on Acacius, a popular general who has conquered Lucius' current homeland. But the story quickly puts Lucius' personal motivations aside in favor of using him as a symbol for a younger generation fed up with the old ways. There are larger political machinations which increasingly play out around the Colosseum games, being held in Acacia's honor, and Mescal shouldered the weight of that growing revelation well. He lets just enough humanity and charm shine through in the early scene, and by the time the character becomes more of a vessel of gladiator, its thought of leadership, he feels worthy of the mental. Maximus cast a long shadow over Gladiator too, but rather than completely mythologizing him, Scott merely around the character's positive influence in the recollections of those who witnessed his journey, namely Lucius and his mother Lucilla. That's mostly handled well, but it does make Acacius a statesman-like character very much in the mold of Maximus. Stick out a little, he helps remind us there's still some sense at the highest level of Roman power. But with Lucius already restraining Maximus' footsteps, Acacius' embodiment of Maximus' ideas feel redundant. Maximus' defeat of Commodus in the arena's 16 years period should have led to a new golden era in Rome, but the resulting vacuum of leadership left the city and even more paranoid. Dangerous place than it was before a failure of better angel that gets swiftly closed over in Gladiator 2. The Senate has been crippled by the emperor's hunger for conquest, leaving old phobies in the Senate like Grotius completely ineffectual, while Lucilla has found her steel in the years since Maximus' sacrifice, paying for her brother Commodus' hobbling of Rome by staying close to the levels of power and advocating for justice. With that idealism and the price she is willing to pay in service of it, Nielsen adds a lot of depth to a character who felt relatively extraneous last time out. Rome may be in a sad state, but that doesn't stop Scott from having a good time rather than getting bogged down by the Emperor tired states. The director often minds them for levity, the frequency with which Gladiator 2 keeps its tongue firmly planted in cheek is a welcome surprise. Considering how familiar the plot feels, even cutaway shots to obviously ever-dropping sermons feel like international winks at the audience. Gladiator 2 is loyal to the fast film structure to a fault, so the lighter tone that Scott strikes really spices up scenes and plot development that otherwise could have felt like rushes. The element of Gladiator 2 most apparent in the current stewards of Marcus Aurelius dream of Rome brothers and co-emperors Geta and Cercela. Their bloodthirsty whims and equally unpredictable mood swings make his nightmarish pair of little freaky boys worthy successors to Jessica and Phoenix extremely simpering comedies. Their antics border on slapstick, but Quinn and Herchinger are each on temperamental and off-putting that they never let you forget the danger Gita and Kerkela pose to Rom's future. This may not possess the same dramatic weight as Phoenix' convincing villain, but they too have a lot of eyeshadow and a little monkey who wears a dress. That's a pretty much as even trade here in Gladiator 2, especially given the Scott finds balance elsewhere. Denzel Washington is absolutely electric in the role of Mercinus. The more nuanced examination of who holds power and how comes through Macrinus Denzel Washington, a gladiator trainer who rose up for salary to wide influence over the city's politics. This aspect of the character becomes more apparent and impressive as the story goes on, and Washington is absolutely electric in the role. Pascal's overperformance is often at its best when he is working to match the Oscar winner. Macrinus is constantly calculating how to advance his cause, and whether Washington channels that through a whisper threat or a showy display of charisma. He owns every room and always says the right thing, whether Macrinus will use all the influence for good or will. To either exploit or benefited Lucius' shift from scene to scene, it makes Macrinus as imposing as any threat Lucius faced in the arena had a reliable screw for the script to turn when the chaos of Gita and Crocola's rule gets a little too predictable. Gladiator 2 strikes a winning balance between its palace intrigue and the action of the games, and Scott maintains a breezy pace through the 2.5 hour runtime. The arena scene that serve as the movie's steady heartbeat tend to put a little more emphasis on size over substance armed with 20 plus years of VFX advancement. Scott floats the zone with larger than life spectacle, a tool with angry baboons and full on naval combat within the Colosseum walls. I think that Romans actually did, which shocked me, are no doubt greater than what Scott was able to achieve last time. But it's not always to more effective ends. The battle are quite distances from each other. Again, baboon and boats, but they are feel just a little bit rushed, a little less focused than their more visceral and immediate counterparts from the first film. Gladiator to 1-1 encounter like a simple sword fight Lucius is forced into and behest of the emperors often wind up feeling more impactful than say a CG Reno battling around the arena floor. But the game's blend of defense and brutality completed its most important task, showing us the stakes of Lucius' continued success and demonstrating that being good at killing other people is a pretty up metric for that success. Gladiator 2 finds strength and honor in the well worn armor of its predecessors. Paul Mascale's depth in the bellboard hero role going to with not only the delightfully deranged Joseph Quinn and Drig Hatchinger but also the Denzel Washington whose Mercurius Macrinus practically screams, "You are not entertained" at the audience every second he is on screen. Radley Scott balances Gladiator 2 action and drama admirably, and even though he is treading familiar ground, Scott at least willing to loosen up the tone in a way that gives Gladiator 2 its own identity. The shadowy political battle for Rome's fate may prove more reliably entertaining than the festival showdown in the Colosseum. Both underlined the importance of bravery and temperance in the face of turbulent times. They do so in the way only blockbuster cinema can, with a bunch of swords and sandals dude working together to avoid death by giant Reno, while a brain rat emperor with a monkey on his shoulder hounds for the best seat in the house. Gladiator 2 is one of the best movie continue here. The Gladiator 2 for 2024 and it is the sequel to 2000 Gladiator. 20 years after being sent away to Africa by his mother Lucilla, Lucius returned to Rome forced to join a stable of gladiators. As he enters his 88-year, Ridley Scott seems to be having more fun than ever. Early on in Gladiator 2, for example, during Paul Mescal's first big showcase scene as ripped fighter Lucius versus Sir Radley throws a whole troop of ravenous, screeching baboons into the arena to attack Lucius and his fellow gladiator. These demoted pyramids look more like evil little CGI alien than actual monkeys, but this staring attack of the wild baboon is just the amuse bouche for the lavish menu of No Holds Barred. Guidely entertaining set pieces to come on brandly executed fight scene involve a giant marauding rhino and another somehow features sharks. Yes, there's a bunch of the bloodthirsty beast merely swimming around in the arena during a recreation of a sea battle, which will have you googling did they really flood the Colosseum? Historically accurate or not, the sight of Marina Predator in the films, the long awaited sequel to stock, iconic Russell Crowe starring Swords and Scandals 2000 original, epitomizes the emphasis here on the brutal descents of the time. There are copious amount of blood and gore throughout, gruesome decapitation, throat slashing, and limbs looped off left, right, and center. One such moment of blood spectrum violence is so borderline comical, you half expect the victim to borrow the line from the Black Knight in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, "Tis but a scratch." In the middle of all the bloody madness in Paul Pascal Lucius the Strong still center for the movie around whom all hell is tranquility and loose. Mescal effortlessly shifts into leading mentality with his performance, imbuing the character with an innate dignity and steely determination as he rises to gladiatorial fame. Although he is not above biting a chunk out of a baboon if need be, like Cruz Maximus in the original film, Lucius doesn't have much choice about becoming a gladiator. He is bought by former slave turned ruthless Roman power broker Macrinus Denzel Washington, who is keen to turn him into the star of his stable of pre-human fighting machines. Washington practically steals the whole film by the way, palpably revealing in the chance to let rip as a smug, self-satisfied schemer of the highest order. Some of his line reading are poor camp. The outstanding cast also feature Connie Nelson as Lucilla, the major return from the first movie, who hovers over proceeding in quietly impressive style, and Pedro Pascal as charismatic as ever, playing Marcus Acacius, the Roman general responsible for destroying Lucius' home and family. So while Lucius is grappling with monkeys, sharks, and occasionally some actual human fighters too, he also has a vengeful eye on Marcus. The subsequent plot machinations rally on some pretty convenient coincidences, and Lucius' rise is inevitably formulaic, but it doesn't really matter because the scenes of mind-boggling spectacle are anything but. Bankrolling that spectacle are the new giant Roman Emperor young Attish twins Gita and Kerkela. Not only do they manage to rival Joaquin Phoenix cameos from the original Gladiator in terms of craze virality, they also has a distinctive list of the ultimate Mad Emperor Caligula about them. Think John Howard's pasty face look as Caligula and 70s TV classic Claudius and Malcolm McDowell's version of the same historical bunkers figure in the notorious 1979 film Caligula. There's even a hilarious counterpart to Krugola's infamous beloved pit horse in the form of Karkela's pit Capcocken monkey pressed on the shoulder, who actually has the film's most daring character arc. And when Maid Lucas pops up as the equivalent of the stadium announcer at a football match, blowing brightly while the gladiator gather in the Colosseum, you know this is not a movie that's taking itself too seriously. That's not to say this very blatant sequel come across as Carry On Gladiator. It is in many ways as compelling and expertise stage as the first Gladiator, but this one feels less concerned with its own epicness and a tad more proudly brook. There's a fierceness to its big swing that has to be applauded. Its rare discourse unleashed, and we are here for it. What could have been a ponderous, predictable sequel to a much loved Oscar winning instead turns out to be a fun romp. However, Gladiator 2 for this award reason, it's a hell of a ride. Fred Henchinger, Joseph Kane, Paul Mescal, Radley Scott, Kenny Nelson, Pedro Pascal, and Denzel Washington are the main cast in the movie. Gladiator 2 audience Rotten Tomato score shows fans are just as entertained as Russell Crowe's original. Gladiator 2's Rotten Tomato audience score shows fans are just as entertained as they were by Russell Crowe's original. Serving as a sequel to Gladiator directed once again by Ridley Scott, the new film follows a similar story involving Lucius, the son of Maximus, and Lucilla, who becomes a gladiator after his home is invaded by the Roman army. The Oscar-nominated Paul Pascal leads Gladiator 2 cast as Lucius alongside Pedro Pascal, Connie Nelson, Denzel Washington, Joseph Quinn, Fred Hanchinger, Leo Reyes, and Derek Jacobi. Now, with the sequel releasing in theater on November 22, viewers are sharing their thought online. Gladiator 2 has debuted to an 83% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes with over 500 verified rating. This is just 4 points below the original movie, suggesting that audiences are just as entertained by the sequel to Quiet Russell Crowe's Maximus. What Gladiator 2 Rotten Tomatoes audience score mean for the sequel? Gladiator 2 had already received generally positive reviews from critics who called it an action packed spectacle that built on its predecessors with heightened blood sports and cap, drawing much of its power and prestige from Denzel Washington's standout performance. For instance, Screen Rant's Gladiator 2 reviews by Grammy Catman calls Reddit's car sequel epic with an absolutely wild Denzel Washington performance. Those reviews resulted in a 72% score from critics compared to the original movie's 80%. Now, Gladiator 2 has debuted to an 83% audience score, which is down just 4 points from the original film, suggesting that audiences are just as entertained by the sequel. Diving deeper into the reviews from audience, the reactions are surprisingly mixed, as many viewers appreciate the action sequence, visuals, and the continuation of the original movie's theme, deeming it a solid, albeit imperfect sequel. However, many also expressed disappointing in its execution, highlighting the lack of character development and criticizing the overly violent and somehow shallow storytelling. Our take on Gladiator 2 Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Gladiator 2 Rotten Tomatoes audience score suggests that fans are just as entertained as they were by the original, which won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Actor for Russell Crowe. However, the audience reviews point out some major problem with the sequel, so don't go in expecting a masterpiece. But as Screen Rant's Grandma Catman says, Gladiator 2 is still a damn good time at the movies. Gladiator 2. Can a film be too much and not enough at same time? This is the counter-drum for Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2, a movie bursting with just enough spectacle to keep it from being boring, but when you try to get anything out of it thematically, slip through your fingers like the sand in a warrior's hand. It's a film that doesn't so much struggle to escape the shadow of its predecessors as setup campaigns willing to hit so many of the same beats and concepts that the rhythm becomes numberly familiar, bursting through the familiarity in a spectacle performance from Denzel Washington, giving such a constantly engaging turn that he almost throws off the film balance you kind of wish the movie was about him instead of its leading man. But that would require a break from the formulaic structure of a hero's journey from slave to leader this film is so content to fulfill. Gladiator 2 opened 16 years after the death of Russell Crowe's Maximus with an impressively staged battle sequence that established a time of great violence and a pair of central characters, the Roman general Marcus Acacius and a refugee from Rome named Lucius Versus Acahano. Acacius leads his soldier on a assault that results in the death of Lucius' wife, setting him up as the enemy that Lucius will have to trouble in the Colosseum. But David Scarpa's script is not that straightforward. It's revealed quickly that Axius is married to Lucilla, the partner of Maximus from the first film, and things get really complicated when it's revealed that Lucius is the son that Lucilla sent off to safety years earlier. That's right, is Maximus too. Before then, Lucius ends up forcing to fight for his life against a group of feral baboons, impressing a gladiator handler named Macrinus, played by Denzel Washington. He is taken in by the rage he sees within Lucius. Currently aimed at General Acacius, cut to Rome where you are introduced to a pair of eccentric emperors named Geta and Carcella. Quinn and Hensinger go all in one fiery-eyed, manic, power-hungry caricature, which is one of the film's bigger problems. It feels like actors in the film are all in different movies. Washington plays Macrinus as the most politically savvy person in any room he is in. But he is doing Shakespeare well. Cohen and Herchinger are doing well, Beavis and Butthead. Of course, we are supposed to see Macrinus as smarter and saner than the emperors, but there's a version of Gladiator 2 that doesn't reduce the men most responsible for the bloodshed to such thin characters. More damaging is how often Gladiator 2 seems distracted by its own spectacle, much as battle in the Colosseum were designed to keep subjugated people from revolting by presenting them with bloodshed as escapism. Gladiator 2 feels obligated to up the ante with its fight scene leading to a number of insane set pieces, including the aforementioned cartoon baboons. The CGI here is not great, which is too bad given how good most of the film looks. A soldier atop a rhino and sharks in the Colosseum, yes, sharks every time the gladiator to foreign interest in something thematically rich regarding power, how it's obtained, and much more. How it's trouble the movie spins off is the other direction almost as if everyone involved is afraid to bite their teeth into anything meaty. And then the film delves so hard into the Lucius Maximus connection that it starts incorporating footage from the first film. It becomes clear that satisfying fan of that movie is all this one really set out to do. For a lot of people, and sometimes for this person, that's enough. It looks great most of the time, and the sound mix is fantastic. Scott doesn't filter in these departments. As for performance, people have come down on Mescal for not being as captivating as Krause, and he is not. But I think that's more because of a script that's too content to make him a carbon copy instead of his own man. Pascal fares better despite less screen time than the setup promises. Still, he is the only performer outside of Washington who one can see make choices that other actor might not have considered, especially when his position as a military leader becomes challenged by everything collapsing around him. Again, it's Washington movie through and through, as the Oscar winner adds another feature to his cap as man who knows how to position himself to take power in the middle of a revolution, but never really consider the cost of those machinations. Imagine a gladiator true from his perspective, and you can see the more ambitious version of his sequel that could have happened. If only the filmmakers were willing to think outside the Colosseum. One of the most infamous unproduced screenplays of all time was Nick Cave's Gladiator 2, a project developed under the title Christ Killer, wherein Crows would return as Maximus, who has to battle his way out of purgatory and is forced to live for generations, battling in some form through the wars of the 20th century all the way to present day. It sounds insane. Of course, it was shut down, but I could not help thinking while watching this Gladiator 2 that for whole to be some middle ground between that kind of grandiose, sharp right turn from the original to one that's so content to stay in the same lane. Yes, I am entertained, but is it all you got? Gladiator 2 review. Paul Pascal is a pensive Avenger in Ridley Scott, serviceable but far from great sequel. It may not be high praise, but Gladiator 2, the sequel to Ridley Scott's landmark slash and Van and syndrome spectacular, is probably about as good as movie as we could have expected it to be. Written by David Scarpa and directed by Scott, who at 86 has not lost his touch for the peacock pageantry of teeming, massive thirsting for blood. The movie is a solid beat of next classic popcorn, a serviceable epic of brutal warfare, Colosseum duel featuring lavish depiction and beast, both animal and human, along with the middle barrow, decadence of palace intrigue. The full film is tailored to the next generation specification of its star, Paul Mescal, who plays a descendant of Russell Crowe's Maximus, and does it by not trying to imitate Crowe's performance in Gladiator. Crowe's wielding a sword that was like an extension of his inner hostility was the ultimate thinking person's badass. Mescal, svelte and placid, comes on more like the Daffy son of Marlon Brando, a forlorn turned trigger. 24 years ago, Gladiator was brassingly old and new at the same time, a hyper-violent, literate action movie rooted in the theatrical antiquity of Hollywood past and rendered with the VFX of the future. With Gladiator 2, we go is knowing more or less what we are getting, but the film still stands strikingly apart from the blockbuster marketplace. It's a Saturday night epic of Tony escapism, but it is a great movie to love the way that some of us love Gladiator. No and no, it's ultimately a mere shadow of that movie, but it's just diverting enough to justify its existence. At the beginning, we learn that Rome is being ruled by twin brother emperor, the Fey Gita, and even more Fey Cracella, who with their pale smirks are like her profundits out of Fellini Strategon. The overstuffed Roman Empire is metastasizing into sordid bloodshed and debauchery. When an armada of Roman battleships led by the idealistic general Marcus Acacius shows up to conquer the North African province of Numidia, it's a rot. One of those killed is the soldier wife of farmer turned troop leader Lucius Versus, which turns him into a monetary tailspin of despair. That stand in marked contrast to the pyramidal wound experienced by Cruz Maximus in Gladiator, where the slaughter of his wife and son scars him so harshly that he considers himself already dead. That's part of the poetic power of Gladiator. Maximus is now prepared to join them in heaven, which elaborates his already considerable ferocity. He wants revenge, so much so that on a deep level he does not give a fuck. Krauss in Gladiator gave one of my favorite performances in cinema. I have watched it a dozen times. That because he played a variation on something we have all seen so often, the setting hard is where to kill, yet invested it with such uncanny soul. His Sukhoi spoke volume, his physicality was existential, and when he lowered his voice to say to Jicune Phoenix Commodus, the time for honoring yourself will soon be at end. I would like to crave out your eyeball with my thumbs. He was more invincible in his silence fury than any superhero. Paul Muscle doesn't have anything approaching that elemental masculine gravitate. His Lucius, who is captured and brought to Rome to be a gladiator, is sulky and pensive with a quizzical look. His stare is sensitive, his grin full, his lower jaw juts, but Muscle has something that works for the movie. He projects not revenge but a shady nobility. The idealism that will make Lucius the potential savior of Rome. Fasta must survive in the gladiatorial arena, which he does by taking on a team of white monkeys who seem like they are from another planet, which is strange, and drawing the attention of Macrinus, Denzel Washington, a former slave who runs the gladiator pulpin and becomes Lucius' mentor. Washington performs in the film's wild card because you cannot pin him down. He is a gregarious good guy, then a mover gagging gossip from senator, then a backstabber, then someone who will stab you anywhere and everywhere. You can feel Washington drawing on his Shakespearean knowledge to layer his character into a scaled real-world vision of ambitious evil. Lucius first thinks that his army is Pascal Axius who led the charge that killed Lucius' wife. But Acacius is actually a decent chief who stands apart from where Rome is heading. He is plotting a coup against the emperors and has the senator like Drake Jacobi's Gracious on board. If there's a relationship that carries Gladiator 2, it's the one between Lucius and his mother, Lucilla, who sent him away from Rome as a boy after the death of Maximus. The two have a few issues to work out, and Nelson acting has acquired a tremendous bite. The way Macrinus rises up, driven by Washington's formidable flair, lands the movie some structural surprises that's less surprising, downright sequel. Dutiful, in fact, is Lucius' late stage embrace of Maximus Moxis and his literal suit of armor. The way Muscle plays him with an anger that never quite simmers to a ball. We cannot help but see him as millennial kickoff of crowds glowering royal punk at Gladiator 2 are not entertained. We are but that necessarily the same as the ethereal. Gladiator 2 leave history in the history books and just enjoy Gladiator fighting shots. There's been a lot of chatters about Gladiator 2's historical inaccuracies and how this is a bad thing. You will not hear that short of nonsense from me. I think the film's joyful disregarded for fact is a good thing and Gladiator 2 is a better film for it. When I go to the cinema, I don't want a history lesson. I'm not thinking about how there's no way the ancient Romans could have let a few bloodthirsty shots loose into the flooded Colosseum put to dangerously enhance a naval battle between two gladiator teams. No, all I am thinking is, am I not entertained? At that moment, at least, I was very much entertained by the sharks zipping around the Colosseum, champion their way through any gladiator unlucky to plunge or be plunged into the increasingly bloodshed water. How could you not be? As a director, Ridley Scott presses the rule of cool above all its historical accuracy. Be damned, gladiator fighting, franchise shark is cool, terrifyingly aggro monkeys attacking gladiator is cool, gladiator riding a rhino and charging his enemies is cool. I don't care that none of this actually happened, they are the coolest part of the movie, but gone with your history book, nerds. Now I realize this might all sound a bit stupid, fair enough, but I'm not the one looking to a Hollywood blockbuster to learn all about ancient Roman culture. Anyway, the important bit is the one of the gladiator to historical inaccuracies get in the way of a good story that because gladiator 2 doesn't have particularly good story to get in the way of. The movie follows a gladiator's troll who needs to fight his way to freedom and becomes a spectacle like figures along the way. This will sound very familiar to those who have been in predecessors, the Russell Crowe starring Oscar winning 2000 movie Gladiator. Scars pulls this track consequently throughout the film. This is mostly out of necessity because the story bits of Gladiator 2 tend to linger and drag. And that's even the Washington and the twin baddies Emperor hamming it up more than a busty Imperator. Fortunately, it's not too long before someone being decorated with arrows or having their head tapped off. Was I not entertained? Some of the time I was, but when I was not, it was not because its character was sitting in a cafe, drinking coffee and reading the morning paper, and all of those things had not been invented yet. It was because the film had slowed to an overbroad crawl to take its very silly plot entirely too seriously. 1 minute a Reno is comically bushing hornfast into a wall, the next a family drama is playing out at melodrama worthy of Shortland Street. The story and drama of Gladiator 2 may be fairly dull, but its superb action, visual spectacle, and outlandish historical inaccuracy are where the film truly shines. The movie Gladiator 2 thumbs up. When Denzel Washington sweeps into Gladiator 2, Ridley Scott's epic about ancient Rome and men at war and sometimes in love, it's with such easy grace that you may mistake his character lose bearing with indifference. What you're seeing is power, inaccurate power that's so raw and so supremely self possesses that it doesn't announce itself. It just takes and it keeps taking as warrior enter the Colosseum to fight and die in the blood sport that gives the sequel to Scott's two-handed gladiator its sour backdrop and much of its juice. It is a performance of charismatic evil and of memorizing stardom both. Like Scott's filming in his elaborately impressive spectacle with its foreign ancient and minorities, exotic animal and equally unfamiliar cause to human nobility, Washington's performance has skill, intensity, and absolute confidence. Each man has an equalified belief in entertainment as a value that's essential to put over an old fashioned, inherently arduous production that like this, the kind that turns the past into a play and doesn't ask you to worry about necessities like historical accuracy, but both director and performer are also veterans when it comes to a popular audience, and since neither has mellowed or slowed with age, Scott turns 87 this year and Washington 70. They still know how to put on a great show. The first gladiator centered on a Roman general Maximus, played by Russell Crowe, who circa 180 AD served an aged emperor in court the death of a young Hotspur and ends up challenging swords in the Colosseum, where he quickly becomes a crowd favorite. Krause then, at the height of his leading man fame, doubling an approximately muscular, if characteristically sensitive lead performance that hold the screen even when challenged by the vulpine charisma of a scene stealing Joaquin Phoenix as the new emperor. The two characters are dead by the end, and Rome itself seems like it may follow rapidly in their wake. They and all the other cast from the original movie haunt the sequel, which is set 16 years later. Gladiator 2 tells the story of another Russia's ostensible simple man, this time named Lucius, who is swept up by violent political forces seemingly beyond his control. The story opens in Numidia, a slice of land hugging the northernmost coast of the African continent. There is a heaving city. Lucius lives with his wife, and while their smiles suggest they are happy enough, they are both soon suiting up to fight a flotilla of Roman invaders. Led by General Acacius, the Roman make quick work for the Numidian. In this regard, the invaders are just as ruthless economic as Scott, who demonstrates a contrast show of his power with the epically scabbed, vividly staged, and short warfare. Fast, brutal, and absorbing, the shocker openers set the template for the rest of the movie, which plays and often feels like one alone. Inventively diverse, elaborately imaginative fight, as in the first time, the diversity of the casting here suggests the vastness of the Roman Empire, a variety that's matched by the many ways characters die trebuchet, arrow, sword, and a magnetic that include a sandal rhino and a drop of rampaging baboons. Every so often, the characters put down their weapon to indulge their other vices or plot and uprising, diverting, interlude that advance the narrative and add crucial ream, giving the character enough time to unclench their jaws and for you to keep processing the history. Gladiator 2 doesn't stray far from the original film, and image of hands and grain pointedly underscores the connection. In either its plotting or fuzzy notions about Roman honor and glory written by David Scarpa, who hatches the story with Peter Craig, the sequel follows Lucius, who, after his wife dies, is taken prisoner, swept up, and tossed about. He ends up in a hellscape where he proves his warrior bona fide to Washington Macrinimus, a wealthy gladiator wrangler, a power player with a heavy past, and a plan for the future. Macrinius buys Lucius to fight in the Colosseum before throngs of Roman whose bloodlust and political rentalness are excited by the displays of cruelty. It's a very relatable. Mescal, a young Irish actor who seems to come out of nowhere a few years ago, has a handful of credit in the short of modest, independent movies the first screen at festivals. All of Us Strangers. He is a charismatic screen presence, one that's appealingly gentle but has enough beat and ambiguity that it is not a surprise that he is played Santley Kowalski, a streetcar named Desired, and well again in a forthcoming New York production. Mescal has bulk up considerably for Gladiator 2 and doesn't seem altogether comfortable with his newly jacked body and uneasy that works for his character's psychological and physical vulnerability. He doesn't have crowd's natural swagger, he holds you more stealthy. Not long after Lucius is captured, the story divides into threads that eventually weave together. The Rome of the sequel is even more barbaric and unsettled than before. There are more scoring, whispering, conspiration, and showy exhibit of descendants. The wonderful card, a Scott's signature, feature an array of interesting new and familiar faces, including some from the first film, Connie Nelson as the sad-eyed royal Lucilla, and Derek Jacobi as a senator, Grotius. Tim McConney as a desperate senator adds delectably unsavory notes as the giggly, extravagantly sadistic young twin emperor Joseph Quinn as Gita and Fred Herchinger are possessively venal and look so pale that it almost a surprise that they have any blood in their vein to spill. The first Gladiator was one of Scar's unqualified success. It was well reviewed, at least by critics who were more interested in directing than in the weakness of the script. It was also sizable box office hit and nominated for a dozen Oscar-winning, some biggies including Best Picture and Actor. Given the recent commercial landscape, which for the past few decades has been dominated by superhero movies, many tolerate for fans rather than for general viewership. The Gladiator selected the first film mass through now seems the most old school thing about it. Despite its contemporary sheen, its digital tools and graphic violence, Gladiator hit the audience because of its old Hollywood style appeal. Scott is working considerably more sophisticated digital tool in the sequel, which add to the versatility that make it easy to slip into the movie and happily stay here. Even when the story tastes your credulity, carousing in the flooded Colosseum is the least of it. Scott holds you fast with his actor, the dynamicism of his filmmaking with shocks of beauty and jolt of queasy humor. Very few directors working today can put across a movie like Gladiator 2 as convincingly, which perhaps explains why the sequel, for its all barbaric violence and the plaintive art I'm sitting discussing about justice and democracy, doesn't have the mournful quality that the first film did. Scott clearly had a blast making this movie, and so did Washington, and they are inviting you to have one too, which proves easy. Gladiator 2, I hate to say that this, but men deserve better than Gladiator 2. I was thinking a lot about men while watching Gladiator 2 last week, and so it seems was everyone else. In the woozy, shell shocked aftermath of the presidential election, as everyone scrambled for explanation as to why Donald Trump won so decisively, conversations turned toward men. Men who voted so differently than women, who are lashing out against feminism and who faces with a mainstream culture that no longer guarantee their dominance would rather opt out, leaving them forever in peril of slipping down a digital monoshare pipeline that end with them dumped at the gobbling feet of Andrew Tate, who celebrate the presidential result by declaring that the patriarchy was back. How are we going to reach the men? Panics has been fretting while a swath of liberal online have insisted that the answer is to engineer some kind of blue state answer to Joe Rogan. Never mind, the Rogan himself would be unlikely to ascribe any counted political leaning to his podcast. In the voice of all of this, Red Scar sequel to his Burley 2000 hit about a Roman general turned arena fighter in opening against big like some Barbenheimer reprise. Expect that Gladiator 2, despite his Best Picture winning legacy, is so underwhelming that you might leave thinking, oh, maybe masculinity really is in crisis. I cannot say that the trouble art started when Hollywood aided dramatized historical macronity to right-wing account that insists that brutalist architecture is bad and eating enormous amount of raw liver is good. But I would not say that entirely inaccurate either. The trick of movie like Gladiator and Master and Commander, which came out within 10 years of each other during what now feels like the last scratch, in which these sort of throwback epics constantly got traction with large audience, is that their bloodshed and grand speeches provided shelter for a lot of sentimentality about honor and dying for what you believe in, sure, but also about men unabashedly realizing the commodities of other men. I knew a guy in high school who would start tearing up when talking about Braveheart, which was a testament to the weakness of Mel Gibson 1995 drama being as much as full as the brutality of its battle sequence. Gladiator ends not with the body of Russell Crowe's Maximus being lifted up in respect to his place as a soldier of Rome, but with fellow fighter Juba burying his friend's family, keepsakes in the floor of the Colosseum and proving that they will see each other again someday. Alas, the closest thing that Gladiator 2 has to Juba is a character played by Peter Menchit, who dies as soon as the movie leaves the media, which is being attacked by Roman legions when it begins. That kingdom on the north coast of Africa is where the film's exiled hero Lucius has ended up after secretly being sent out of Rome by his mother Lucilla after the death of his father, who the sequel makes explicit as Maximus. In the 2000 film, Lucius was portrayed by a young Spencer Treat Clark, while in the new one he is played by a reconcilably beefed by Paul Pascal in the first major studio role. The Irish actor are usually intriguing presence doesn't hold the screen here so much as he finished into its turmoil of all the ways in which he feels misguided. The most fatal may be his utter inability to seem like someone other guys would follow to their death. Mescal's career to death has been heavily delineated by women, from his breakout role in the TV adaptation of Solly Ronnie Normal People to the part in Coraltoval's debut feature After Sun that made him a critic's favorite, and he has an excellent at playing exclusive object of longing, but he is terrible at giving the rousing speech that were so iconic in Gladiator and the Gladiator 2, which has a clunkier script written by David Scarpa attempt to recreate. His instinct to underplay these moments rather than grow theatrically, which is a problem, especially when sadly, with somewhat confusing solution like we are, death is not. It's easier to imagine audience snackering the sweeping over Gladiator 2 as the first film demonstrated. These movies requires an earnestness that this new one simply cannot maintain. Instead, like Scott and Scarpa lost calibration, Napoleon, it tends to land in a uneasy place between an eventually and international funniest Fred Harchinger playing half of a pair of tyrannical twin emperor, which Joseph Crane gives a performance so outside that it turns this very scene into a joke. Denzel Washington fares a lot better as a scheming villain. McCrane is turning out some pleasingly unpredictable line reading, I was partial to, I own your house, I want your loyalty, and flashing a woolship crown as he starts to realize the slave he bought to fight is far more valuable than he could have dreamed. While Lucius is the designated hire to Rome and to franchise, Macrinus has a backstory so much more compelling that you start to root for his rattleness claim to the top, practically given Lucius' reluctance to step up to leadership or acknowledge the position that his mother and her husband, the General Marcus Acacius Pater Pascal, is a kind of substitute Cropole have been put in. Macrinus is at least self-motivated while Lucius reads as indifferent until the script required him to make an abrupt shift in loyalties. When Macrinus talks about the rake he sees in his new fighter, it takes all of Washington power to deliver an observation that's patently uncheered. Lucius at best looks like someone engaged in a prolonged sulk. I didn't adore Gladiator, but I appreciate the melodramatic conviction at its core. The way it was unabashedly emotional about grief and justice and restoring order to the world. Gladiator 2 echoes elements from the first film, including talk of the dream of Rome as a more egalitarian place, but while the idea is more central to the plot in the sequel, it feels even more abstract. Romance in this film is not solid enough to record saving or destruction. It's a series of physical interior the character pass through. It's only when character fight that the movie comes alive. The best battle sequence is the aggregated opening one when Marcus leads a fleet of ships to conquer Numidia, raising built-in towers of his army to scale the walls and kill the soldier trying to defend it. Among them, Lucius Archer wife, there are also collision clashes involving a Reno, a steed, and a recreation of a naval battle that involved flooding the arena. Scar the Old Poe knows how to grieve these scenes as vicious vitality that overcome any thought about how the Romans supposedly got live shark in the water, but the thriller of the action sequence just underscores the hilarious of the rest of the enterprise. Sure, not all of us spend a lot of time thinking about the Roman Empire, but those we do deserves better than this. Gladiator 2 ending explain whose hand is that. Gladiator 2 ending concludes the sequel with the expected sword fight, Colosseum battle, and political machination, but not without a familiar helping hand closing out the film. Gladiator 2 cast of character is led by Paul Mescal's Lucius Versus, who began the film under the Allies Anno after having his home destroyed by the Roman army. Lucius became embroiled in the war of gladiatorial combat, echoing the story of Maximus Decimus Mercedius that concluded with Gladiator's emotional ending. Throughout the film, Lucius, one of the many gladiator characters based on real people, reckoned with his true heritage as a grandson of Marcus Aurelius and the son of Maximus. Rather than bury his head in the sand and remain content to carry out wrathful vengeance, Lucius embraces his familial connection and begins fighting for the good of Rome via the Colosseum. Epic fight scene and strong performance that contributed to Gladiator 2 positive reviews. By the time of Gladiator 2 ending, Lucius' destiny is altered, an empire is changed forever, and a long-lasting legacy lives on. Whose hand is that in Gladiator 2 final scene? In the final scene of Gladiator 2, Lucius returned to an empty Colosseum just as Damon and Sans Juba did in Gladiator. Lucius kneeled in the sand as the purple sky above him signifies the dawn of the new Rome, asking his father Maximus to speak to him as Lucius does so. The film shows a familiar scene from Gladiator of a hand grazing the stalk of grain field. Maximus' dreams in Gladiator ending saw him journey to Elysium, the blissful Roman afterlife, to reunite with the deceased wife and son. These scenes were shown again in Gladiator 2's ending to signal that Maximus' legacy lives on through Lucius. Maximus' character is summed up in both films by an iconic Gladiator line: "What we do in life echoes in entirety." Maximus fight for what was right, allowing him to live peacefully in entirety via Alcism. Lucius is now attempting to do the same with the flashes of his father's hand, typifying this is a Gladiator 2 ending. Lucius became the Prince of Rome, fulfilling his destiny. Lucius' intention to continue Maximus' belief and fight for what is right is summed up in the conclusion of his character arc, unlike Maximus, who died at Gladiator. Lucius transcends Roman slavery and embraces his rightful place as the true ruler of the Roman Empire. Gladiator historical accuracy is often thrown into question, but the idea of Roman empires being chosen by a multitude of methods, from cutthroat manipulation to lineage, are being picked by the Senate is often constant the history. In Gladiator 2 ending, Lucius stakes his claim to Rome via the connections he holds to Gladiator Italy cast member Marcus Aurelius. Lucius is the grandson of the former emperor and despite hiding the lineage for much of his life, reveal this fact in Gladiator 2 ending. The climax of the film sees Lucius and Denzel Washington Macrinus standing between two armies, the Roman legions and the Praetorian Guard. The Roman army was already loyal to Lucius thanks to Pedro Pascal's general Acacius and the reveal of the farmer's heritage, but the Praetorian Guard was serving Macrinus. Lucius stands in front of the two armies after defeating Macrinus and proclaiming himself as the Prince of Rome. This allows the wavering Praetorian Guard to follow Lucius as Rome's new ruler after spending decades hiding from his destiny. Lucius finally becomes what he has always meant to be and tries to usher in his grandfather's dream of Rome. How Lucius succeeds in restoring the dream of Rome. The dream of Rome is mentioned at length throughout both Gladiator and Gladiator 2. This dream began with Marcus Aurelius and was the idea that Rome would eventually stop being ruled by emperors with conflicting ideologies, beliefs, and temperaments, and instead be ruled by the people. This dream linked to the real-world system of dictatorship and republics, with Marcus Aurelius wishing for Rome to be the latter, something Lucius somewhat succeeds in achieving in Gladiator 2's ending. This power could see Lucius instill a republic, finally completing the dream that began with Marcus Aurelius. In embracing his place as the Prince of Rome, Lucius now holds the power to make Marcus Aurelius' dream and by extension that of Maximus a reality. Lucius has power over the Roman people, the Roman army, and the Praetorian Guard due to the death of Gladiator II's twin Roman emperor and the scheming Macrinus. This power could see Lucius instill a republic, finally completing the dream that began with Marcus Aurelius was fought for the Maximus and shaped the entire story of Gladiator 2. What Lucilia's death and arrow mean. Another character who believed in the dream of Rome was Lucilla, the mother of Lucius and the daughter of Marcus Aurelius. In Gladiator 2's final fact thought Lucilla is tragically killed in an attempt to score his power by turning the Roman people against the remaining twin emperor Cracella. Macrinus organized Lucilla's execution in the Colosseum. Lucilla's death means that the Roman people lose all faith in Cracella and Dita, despite both being killed due to the machination of Macrinus. Moreover, Lucilla's death, specifically the cause of his event, has greater symbolic meaning throughout entire Gladiator 2. Lucius is shown keeping hold of an arrow shaft torn from the projectile that killed his wife in the film's opening. This arrow was a symbol of Lucius' revenge quest, fueling him in his desire to kill Acacius. However, Lucilla is killed by an arrow shot by Macrinus, signifying that he or more aptly men like him should have been the object of Lucius' quest all along. Acacius is revealed as someone who does not like war despite waking it, only doing so to protect Lucilla from the madness of Crocala and Gita. The final act revealed this all while showing Macrinus as Gladiator 2's true villain. The arrow striking from Lucilla reminds Lucius with Acacius was never someone who he should have held contempt for, but that it is Macrinus who needs to die to scare Rome's democratic future. Linking back to the arrow Gladiator 2's protagonist retrieved from the wife's dead body. How Gladiator 2 ending is similar to Gladiator 1's. Since the trailer from Ridley Scott's 2024 sequel was released, Gladiator 2 has been dubbed a stealth remake of its predecessors. Although the former include enough new elements to stand on its own as a sequel, there is no denying that it uses many similar elements from the original Gladiator. especially those that proved effectiveness in 2000. The ending of Gladiator 2 proves this by being closely connected to the final moments of Gladiator. For intense as Lucius talk about the dream of Rome, the iconic song Now We Are Free begins playing. This song can be heard as Lucius kneels in the Colosseum, just as it can be in the first movie when Juba does the same. Gladiator to final shot and also be after mentioned scenes of Maximus brushing the grain stalk as he reunited with his family, which is one of the last shot in the original movie. Overall, these similarities are used to convey the thematic similarities between Gladiator and Gladiator 2, reinforcing the idea that both films are about legacy, honor, sacrifice, and fighting for what is right. Does Gladiator 2 set up a third movie? The last major question stemming from Gladiator 2 ending is whether it set up a third movie in the franchise. While many did not believe Gladiator 2 was even necessary, the film's strong international open weekend and good reviews prove that a return to Ridley Scott's version of Rome is welcome. With that in mind, a trilogy could be crafted out of some seeds planted in Gladiator 2 as well as comments from Scott himself to French film magazine premieres. Scott's idea stems from the love of The Godfather, with Gladiator 2 ending echoing the iconic film series by Francis Ford Coppola. Lucius is now in a position he did not originally want. Lucius has taken the legacy of his father and grandfather and found himself as the Prince of Rome, and while he is committed to doing what is right, it is not a position he wanted for himself initially. This allows Gladiator 2 ending to tease a sequel, with the third film potentially exploring Lucius' quest to realize the dream of Rome and trouble fulfilling his legacy. The movie director is Teddy Stark, and the release date was the movie of November 22, 2024. All 9 deaths in Gladiator 2 explained. Gladiator 2 is even bloodier than its predecessors, as nearly every major character dies in the sequel. Gladiator's ending features the death of Maximus, Decimus Mercedius, Russell Cruz, and Commodus, with Maximus' death and his legacy continue to loom over the events and character in Gladiator 2. The original Gladiator also includes the death of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, Antonius Praximo, Maximus' wife, and Maximus' son. Between General Marcus Actitius and his troops invading Numidia, the bloodshed during the gladiator game in the Colosseum, and the backstabbing conducted by Macrinus Denzel Washington, there is copious bloodshed throughout the story. And during Gladiator 2 ending, Lucius Verus Aurelius is one of the few prominent characters to survive the sequel, while many characters die in Gladiator 2. This list only covers the named character who perish. The first one is Arishart. Just as Maximus' wife and son were killed, Lucius' quest for vengeance is born out of his wife Arishart, played by Wuval Conan, being killed when General Acacius and his troops invade Numidia. When Numidia is under attack, Arishart fights alongside her husband and the other defenders and uses a bow and arrow to defend her home from the invaders. During the battle, Arishart is killed when a Roman archer fires an arrow into her chest. She topples into the water below, where a heartbroken Lucius cradles her. Arishart is killed to help shield Lucius' hatred towards General Acacius and the Roman armies, along with his desire to desert them. She serves the same purpose as Maximus' wife, although she is given slightly more agency and characterization. Before they learn of the Romans' impending invasion, there is a brief glimpse of the peaceful and loving life that Lucius and Arishart have built together, and she also takes an active role in fighting to defend Numidia. Jobartha. Jobartha, played by Peter Mensah, is a chieftain in Numidia who helps lead Lucius, Arishart, and the other defenders against the Roman invaders. He has been a mentor to Lucius during the past 16 years in Numidia. Lucius and Jugurtha are among the battle saviors, who are taken captive and sold into slavery. Jabartha makes peace with the fact that he is about to reach the end of his life and refuses to fight and becomes a gladiator for the Romans' entertainment. When he is tossed into a pit with Lucius and several others, they are faced with the horde of feral baboons. Jugurtha does not make any effort to fight back as one of the baboons savagely mauls him. His death is another injustice that fuels Lucius' hatred and desire for vengeance. It also severed Lucius' last living connection to Numidia, which is necessary since Lucius' future is in Rome and is restoring gladiator dream of Rome that his grandfather Marcus Aurelius and his father Maximus died to protect. General Marcus Acacius, played by Pedro Pascal. At Macrimus' suggestion, General Acacius is sent to fight to the death in the Colosseum as punishment for plotting to overthrow Emperor Geta, played by Joseph Cohen, and Emperor Caracalla, played by friend Hatchinger. Acacius knows Lucia's real identity but not of love for Lucilla. Acacius refuses to kill Lucius and throw down his weapon. Lucius is commanded to execute Acacius, but he also discards his weapon in the show of solidarity and mercy. Macrinus knows that Acacius was a hero adored by the Roman people and that they will lose faith in Emperor Geta and Emperor Caracalla after they send Acacius to his death. Emperor Geta and Emperor Caracalla do not expect his surrender and order the Praetorian Guard to fire their arrows at Acacius. His death is part of Macrinus' plans to destabilize Emperor Geta and Emperor Caracalla's regime. Mercenaries note that Acacius was a hero adored by the Roman people and that they will lose faith in Emperor Geta and Emperor Caracalla after they send Acacius to his death. Acacius' demise also requires Lucius to step in and complete the plan that was already in motion to take Rome from despotic rulers and to rekindle Marcus Aurelius' dream. Emperor Geta, played by Joseph Quinn. As Mercinus gains more favor with Emperor Geta and Emperor Caracalla, he devastatingly turns the two brothers against each other. He ultimately plans to dispose both of them and to take the throne for himself. Since Emperor Geta is more in control, Mercinus chooses to kill him first. Macrinus makes Emperor Caracalla believe that his brother is conspiring against him and that this not only poses a threat to him but to Emperor Caracalla's pet monkey Dondus. Emperor Geta is killed by Macrinus, who saved the fallen leader's head and later present it to the Roman senator. With Geta removed, Macrinus' empire in all but name, Emperor Caracalla is too unable to rule as evidence when the names Dondus his first consul. By naming Macrinus his second consul, Macrinus now has the power needed to do as he pleases, which includes being able to command the Praetorian Guard led by Tegola. Vigo, played by Leor Daz. Vigo Leordes is a gladiator trainer who works for Macrinus. His training methods are brutal, including when he forces Lucius to practice rowing for hours and even as the skin is shafted from his hands. Ravi, played by Alexander Karim, who is a doctor, former gladiator, and a friend to Lucius, hands over the key to the gladiator cell. This allows Lucius and the other gladiator to leap out of their cells and begin their uprising against the Roman establishment. During his struggle, Lucius kills Vigo by stabbing him in the throat with the point of a wooden sword. Given how Vigo tried to push and hurt Lucius throughout the story, it was only a matter of time until Lucius killed him. Vigo is a byproduct of a corrupt institution led by individuals like Macrinus, Emperor Geta, and Emperor Caracalla. In order to create a better system, they are not the only one who need to be eliminated, with minions like Vigo also needed to be defeated. Senator Grossus, played by Derek Jacobi. Senator Grossus and Lucilla are the only actors from the previous movie who reprised their role in Gladiator 2. Gracius is still loyal to Marcus Aurelius and is therefore loyal to his Marcus Aurelius' daughter Lucilla. Despite his clandestine effort with Lucilla and General Acacius to dethrone Emperor Geta and Emperor Gracchus, Gracius does not live to see his rebellious and well intentioned efforts come to fruition. His death gets rid of one of the last living links to Marcus Aurelius and make it all the more necessary for Lucius to be one of the actualize the dream of Rome. Gracius, along with Lucilla and other treasonous senators, are brought into the center of the Colosseum in the aftermath of their tragedy being discovered. Unfortunately, Gracius is killed during the bloodshed that ensues in the Colosseum. Gracius is killed because of his lifelong scorn of Lucilla and Marcus Aurelius. His death gets rid of one of the last living link to Marcus Aurelius and makes it all the more necessary for Lucius to be the one to actualize the dream of Rome. Emperor Carcella. While manipulating Emperor Caracalla was useful in Mercinius' ascent to power, it becomes clear during the gladiator revolt that Macrinus no longer needs him. At this point, Emperor Carcella is little more than a liability. The Praetorian Guard is already looking to mechanize for order, and he cannot afford Emperor Carcella's childish instability in a time of such chaos. Macrinimus murdered Emperor Carcalla by stabbing him in the ear, officially bringing an end to the twin emperors' reign. Emperor Carcalla, outliving his brother, has nothing to do with being a superior ruler, and is only because Mercinius knew he would.